before marriage, many young girls are called angels by the young men who are in love with them. After marriage, they are called angels too, because they're always harping on something.
Travel along, Catholic pilgrims, for 1 year as we learn from Venerable Fulton Sheen, one of the greatest Catholic teachers in modern times. Join me, Amy Thomas, once a week for a short reading out of Bishop Sheen's book, Way to Inner Peace. Hello, Catholic pilgrims, and welcome to week 45. So this week is our last reading in the wisdom section, and this will be our longest reading thus far. I actually think this topic this week is the longest reading in the whole book, unless I'm mistaken. But next week we will be moving into the You section, and there are some very interesting topics in there. They're all interesting, of course, but I'm very much looking forward to reading some of the You topics to you all. But this week, our reading is about silence. And this is a topic that we usually do not want to think about or talk about. Silence makes us uncomfortable. And Bishop Sheen's going to show us why it makes us uncomfortable, but why it is so necessary to the spiritual life. So our three key points are distractions, contemplation, and prayer. Number 45, silence. We live in the most talkative age in the history of the world. It would take 10 or 15 million men in previous ages to communicate to others the same information which one person today provides in a single broadcast. The love of noise and excitement in modern civilization is due in part to the fact that people are unhappy on the inside. Noise exteriorizes them, distracts them, and makes them forget their worries, at least for the moment. There is an unmistakable connection between an empty life and a hectic pace. To make progress, the world must have action, but it must also know why it is acting, and that requires thought, contemplation, and silence. The world is in danger of becoming like a turnstile that is in everybody's way but stops nobody. It is a place where we look into everything but see nothing. Felix Frankfurter tells the effect of excessive talkativeness on government. Everything is done under blare and noise. The deliberative process is impaired, and government becomes too susceptible to quick thinking. It is, I believe, of deep significance that the Constitution of the United States was written behind closed doors, and it is well to remember that earth was thrown on the streets of Philadelphia to protect the convention from the noise of traffic. It might also be added that when the apostles received the Holy Spirit, it was behind closed doors too, and after they kept 9 days of silence awaiting the coming of heavenly wisdom. Action is the great need of the Eastern world, silence the need of the Western. The East, with its fatalism, does not believe that man does anything. The West, with its actionism, believes that man does everything. Somewhere in between is the golden mean wherein silence prepares for action. He who holds his tongue for a day will speak much more wisely tomorrow. Even friendships are matured in silence. Friends are made by words. Love is preserved in silence. The best friends are those who know how to keep the same silences. As Maeterlinck wrote, speech is too often not, as the Frenchman defined it, the art of concealing thought, but a quiet stifling and suspending thought, so that there is none to conceal it. Speech is of time. Silence of eternity. The ancient Spartans used to say that a fool cannot be silent, and the scriptures say that a fool's voice is known by many words. It is all very well to plaster our church lawn with placards saying, "Leave the world better than you find it." But we will never leave the world better until through silence, contemplation, and prayer, we improve ourselves. We must leave the world to help the world. That life is most effectively lived, which every now and then withdraws from the scene of action to contemplation, where one learns the terrible defeat and futility which come from excessive absorption in detail and action. Throughout the United States, there is growing what is known as the retreat movement, in which busy men and women betake themselves over a weekend to a quiet place in the country where they spend time in silence, prayer, and purging their consciences. The ancient Romans used to keep a bowl outside the business house, and whenever they left it at the close of day, they washed their hands as if to imply they even washed their hands of their business. In silence, there is humility of spirit, or what might be called a wise passivity. In such, the ear is more important than the tongue. God speaks, but not in cyclones, only in the zephyrs and gentle breezes. As the scientist learns by sitting passively before nature, so the soul learns wisdom by being responsive to his will. The scientist does not tell nature its laws. Nature tells the scientist. We do not tell or impose our will on God. In silence, like Mary, we await an annunciation. From this, learn the lesson that those who would become wise must become silent. A mirror is silent, yet it reflects forests, sunsets, flowers, and faces. Great aesthetic souls, given to years of meditation, have taken on a radiance and a beauty which are beyond the outlines of face. They seem to reflect, like the mirror on the outside, the Christ they bear within. What is really important is what happens within us, not outside us. The rapidity of communication, the hourly news broadcasts, tomorrow's news the night before, all these make people live on the surface of their souls. The result is that very few live inside themselves. They have their moods determined by the world. Instead of carrying their own atmosphere with them as the earth does as it revolves around the sun, they are like barometers that register every change in the world outside. Silence alone can give them an inner sanctuary into which they may retire for repose, as hidden gardens wherein, like Adam and Eve before the fall, they walk with God in the cool of the evening. Only in solitariness is true spirituality born, when the soul stands naked before its God. In that moment, these are the only two realities in the universe. In this discovery is born love of neighbor, for then we love our fellow human beings, not because of what they can do for us, but because we see that they too are real or potential children of God. Though truth is not personal, we make it personal by contemplation. We live in what is known as the information age. Bishop Sheen rightly describes our times as being the most talkative age in the history of the world. And if you think about it, we literally carry around pretty much all the information in the world in our pockets. And that's just mind-blowing when you think about it. But sometimes it overwhelms me. I don't know about you, but it really does. I'll set out to go look something up because I'm curious about something. And there's just so many trails to follow. And I'll just become overwhelmed. And there have been times when I've thought, I just wish there was like just one book that just told me the truth of something. And then I could just grab that book off a shelf, open it up, read it, and then I would know. Because now, because of all the information, we have to sift through everything. And it's just so noisy to me. Like, I don't know who's telling me the truth. I don't know what's going on. I don't know who I should listen to, with regards to like political things or just things in history. It's so difficult to find who you think is telling you the truth. Now, I know the Catholic Church tells us the truth, in scripture and moral matters and things like that. But like, if I just want to know something about when King Henry VIII declared himself the head of the church in England, like, I just want to read something about that and not have to sift through everything. Ugh, it gets so exhausting. On one hand, it's really awesome because we can really look up a lot of things. But on the other hand, oh man, it gets very distracting and very noisy. Not to mention we have social media where everybody has their voice, mine included. And so it just creates this bubble around our head that is constantly filled with the world. And I don't know about you, but sometimes it just exhausts me. It really does. But we are not good about being silent. Because when we're silent and when the air around us is silent and our homes are silent, it gets uncomfortable. We get really uncomfortable. I think about parents that, all their kids have left the home and it's just the two of them. Oftentimes those parents will talk about how silent the house is and how weird that is and how much they miss children's laughter and talking to their children. And not all silence is meant to be desired. I don't think we should desire to have our homes free of all noise. I don't think that's necessarily good. And obviously when you have kids, as you know, there is hardly ever a moment of silence except for when they're sleeping. But it's nice to have a house full of laughter and talking and music and those kinds of things. But in the spiritual life, we do need to seek out silence. And we find that very difficult. And the reason that we find it difficult is like Bishop Sheen says, we don't want to face ourselves. We don't want to face maybe who we have become, or we don't want to face a nagging problem that we know we need to work on or solve, and we'd rather put it off. And sometimes we're just so unhappy with maybe ourselves or the state of things in our life that we don't want to think about it. We want to be distracted because the silence will force us to think about it. Because that's what silence does. When we sit in silence, our mind or our soul is going to offer up what needs to be dealt with. It really will. If you sit there in silence, your mind is going to say, okay, we have this problem. Here it is. We'd like to go over it now. We need to go over this. And oftentimes we don't want to do that. And so we push it away with distractions. And there are two really primary ways that we distract ourselves. One is through entertainment. We will scroll through social media, or we will read lots and lots of gossipy news stories, or we'll go watch Netflix for hours, or we will go shopping at the mall. Those are all forms of entertainment. Those are all ways of distracting ourselves. And it's not bad to watch a movie. It's not bad to read the news. It's not bad to go shopping for yourself now and then. None of those things are bad in and of themselves. Though we have a tendency to do them all the time. We want to fill every waking moment with some form of entertainment if we're not at work, so that we are distracted. And then the other one is noise. Just having noise around. I know people who, when they get home from work, they just turn on the TV, not to really listen to anything, but to just have noise in the background. They don't like the silence. Like I said, you don't always have to have it silent in your house, but you need to ask yourself maybe why you need to have the TV on. Why can't you just have a moment of silence to decompress after a long day of work and kind of let your thoughts come to you? It's hard to do that during a work day. It's hard to take a moment and really dissect what's been going on or think about what you need to think about and contemplate it. But when you get home, if you can, if you don't have little kids running around or anything like that, maybe to just take a moment and just decompress is something that we need to do. And then a lot of times people will just have music on constantly. And this is the problem I have. Like, I cannot go for a run by myself without music or a podcast. And when I do, the uncomfortable thoughts that come into my head nearly cause me to stop running. This hurts. That. And so I found that music keeps me going. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because it helps me to exercise. But I think it's kind of sad that I can't just go out and enjoy a run in nature without being distracted by some noise. And I've thought to myself, what if while I'm on that run, I go deep into prayer with God, or I start thinking about things and pondering things and get some really good thoughts going. But I don't allow myself to do that because I've got a podcast going or music playing. And so I really do think that there are times when we need to just have silence. Now, years ago, I went to a silent retreat in Cincinnati when we were living in Ohio. And I wasn't super excited about it. I wanted to do it because, kind of everybody talks about doing it. And I wanted to see what it was all about. But I was really, really worried that I was going to be utterly bored for an entire weekend because we got there on like a Friday night and we didn't leave until about Sunday evening. I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to just be really tough to be completely silent that entire time. Like, I couldn't talk to the other women that were there. I could only talk to the priest when we were doing confession. Even at dinner time, we couldn't talk to each other. It was just clinking of forks on plates and, food being scraped across the plate. It was kind of uncomfortable, but we all knew that's what we were doing. So it wasn't the awkwardness of if you were just having a silent moment because nobody knew what to say. We just knew we couldn't talk. And when I first got there, that first night, I was struggling with the silence a little bit. I was like, man, I'd really like to talk to these ladies. I'd really like to know who they are. I'd really like to talk to the priest and all this stuff. But it wasn't long before the silence became very welcoming and very inviting. And I was in this really big Catholic building. It wasn't just a church. It was something else. I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it had several churches within it. It was very big. And during our free time, we could just roam around in silence. And that's what I did. I would walk around. I would just go into the church and just sit and look at all the artwork. And I would pray and I would journal a little bit and I would read and I would just talk to God. And so many thoughts came to the forefront of my mind. And because so many of the distractions were dropped away, I didn't find myself thinking about grocery lists or all the activities I was going to have to do the next week, or what I needed to get done for my kids, or how to keep going with homeschooling, or any of that. I really could just focus on God. And it was so beneficial. And the weird thing is when we left on Sunday evening and I drove the hour home to Dayton, Ohio, when I got home, my family, of course, was so happy to see me and they wanted to hear all about it and everything. And I was happy to tell them, but it was weird to all of a sudden be surrounded by noise again. And, I'd only been gone for just like 2.5 days. And it was difficult. It was a little difficult to come back to noise. I mean, it didn't take long to get used to it, but it was weird. I could feel that I was having to make this transition from that very silent spiritual weekend that I had back to my life with my family and doing all of the family things where there is lots of noise. But I walked away from that fully getting why the religious that are contemplative and spend tons and tons of time in prayer, I get why they come up with fantastic writings and thoughts to share with the rest of us, because it really does allow you to connect so well to God. And so we need that time of contemplation. God needs that ability to get into our souls and speak to us. Bishop Sheen says, God does not speak in cyclones. He is not loud at all. He speaks in the zephyrs and in the gentle breeze. And so he needs us to calm down and be still and quiet and just let him into our minds and into our souls so that we can have a conversation, that he can impress things upon our souls, that he can get us thinking about things. Bishop Sheen speaks of this one man named Felix Frankfurter, and he tells of the effect of excessive talkativeness on government, where he says everything is done under blare and noise. The deliberative process is impaired, and government becomes too susceptible to quick thinking. And don't you guys feel this? Don't you feel this with our political atmosphere? Everything is just blare and noise. And everybody is shouting. Everybody's calling each other names. This side says they're right, but this side says they're wrong. And then vice versa. There's hardly any way to just listen and try to discern what is right and true, because there is just so much going on. You get on social media and everybody's got an opinion. And you get on the news and everybody's got an opinion. And you read news articles and everybody's got an opinion. And there's just so much coming at you that it just becomes like clashing cymbals. And how are you supposed to figure anything out that way? And the effect is that we just have quick thinking. We feel like we have to make a decision like right now, and we have to have a response right now, and we have to deeply care about this issue right now. And we're not allowed to think about it, because if we take the time to think about it, then that issue is gone and passed in the news cycle, and the next issue is up, and now we need to think about this thing, and it's all blare and noise. And think about it. What's your opinion on it? Do you have an answer? What do you think about this? And we're not given time to contemplate. And so a lot of people make really poor decisions. All of us do, because we're not given the time to think things through. And so we're left with bad decisions, quick thinking that typically results in nothing really getting solved in the proper way or in the moral way. And I do think a lot of this is done by design. Just kind of keep you anxious, keep you on your toes, keep you anticipating the next disaster. Nobody can think when that's the way of things. We can't come to logical conclusions. Nobody allows us the space or the time to do that. We aren't allowed to formulate our thoughts coherently, and we're all shouting at each other, trying to be heard. And it's just difficult. And so I think we really do have to take a step back. So what I would suggest is evaluate your day. Do you have time carved out for prayer? And again, we've talked about prayer before. It doesn't have to be hours long. Most of us are not in a position to be able to do that. But at least 10 to 15 minutes. Can you carve that out of your day? If not, you might want to check your priorities. But do you at least have time carved out for prayer? What does the rest of your day look like? Are there a lot of distractions? Do you find yourself reaching for the TV or social media in order to distract yourself? How often do you have silent time? Oh, when you're getting ready in the morning, do you have silent time? At the end of the night, do you have silent time? Really evaluate and see, is there a place where I can add in maybe just 15 more minutes of silent time? If you're somebody that works, your drive home, what would it look like to take the first 10 minutes of your drive and just drive it in silence to kind of collect your thoughts? So that when you get home, you've had some downtime, you've decompressed just a little bit, and you can be available to your family. So anyway, that's what I would suggest is look at your distractions. Where can you add in some silent time? It doesn't have to be silent all the time, but just a little bit so that you can have more opportunities for contemplation. And especially having a little bit of time carved out for prayer so that God can speak to your soul. So that is all for this week, Catholic Pilgrims. I will see you back here for week 46. And until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.